Hello and welcome to my review of The Amazing Spider-Man number 42, an issue written by Nick Spencer with art by Ryan Ottley. And when I ended up reviewing the last issue of Amazing Spider-Man, the first issue of this True Companions arc, I mentioned that this book has ADHD. It's all over the place. Nick Spencer doesn't want to sit with any story. A lot of them don't end up being resolved. One of the biggest ones being who is Kindred, and that is just way in the background, though I also mentioned that I do like some of these individual stories. I know that J. Jonah Jameson having a podcast is not a hard-hitting story, but I actually liked it. Now, this whole Life Tablet story with Boomerang is okay because I like Boomerang, but we ended up last issue seeing that the piece that they were going to retrieve of the Life Tablet was being protected by Gog. And so we're going to continue this issue with Spider-Man and Boomerang dealing with Gog, right? Well, maybe not, because this book is always kind of scattered. You never know what you're going to get. And with this, you end up getting Spider-Man explain to Boomerang who Gog is. You end up having Boomerang pretend that he knows Gog. He obviously doesn't. Spider-Man gives us a background that I thought was enough to get us going, enough to get us on board with who exactly Gog is. The problem is that was not enough for Nick Spencer. We go off to an origin story for Gog told by Gog himself, and pretty much it ends up being the My Buddy commercial from back in the day. If you didn't know who My Buddy was, he was a little toy that ended up going around and being a kid's best friend.
My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, wherever I go, he goes. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, I'll teach him everything that I know. My buddy and me, like to climb up a tree. My buddy and me, we're the best friends that could be. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy and me.
My Buddy from Play School.
So yeah, you end up having My Buddy, and you see that this prince got Gog as his best friend. Unfortunately, that friendship kind of ends when the prince's planet gets attacked, and they all have to leave. And unfortunately, Gog gets separated from the prince and ends up crash landing on Earth, where he is found by Kraven the Hunter, and then pretty much he turns now into My Pet Monster.
My pet monster, on him I can depend. My pet monster, a monster of a friend. He's big and blue and scary, but a friendly monster too. My pet monster, I love you.
So yeah, you end up getting a history of Gog. He goes from being My Buddy to My Pet Monster. But you end up having Spider-Man through all this feel bad for Gog. He even says at the beginning that he thinks that Gog is pretty much being loyal. Gog is not bad. He just wants a friend. So what they end up doing is getting Reed Richards to use Pym Particles to shrink Gog down. He's become way, way too big. He ends up being pretty much a monstrosity there. Well, they shrink him down to his regular size and send him back to his home planet, or at least the planet that he came from, that where the prince was before, with one of the things being the coordinates of Earth are still in this ship, so that if he runs into problems, he can return. That kind of comes into play at the end. And when he gets to the planet, it's now involved in a huge war being led by the queen, the prince's mom. And so then you end up then, again, though, going through a My Buddy commercial.
My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, wherever I go, he goes. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, I'll teach him everything that I know. My buddy and me, like to climb up a tree. My buddy and me, we're the best friends that could be. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy and me.
My Buddy from Play School.
Yeah, and that time the commercial didn't quite work out as well as the prince is killed right as Gog gets to him. Kind of reminds me of the movie City of Angels, where Nick Cage, he said he's an angel, and then he decides to be just a regular guy, and then Meg Ryan dies right then, and it ruins everybody's world and made me cry. But yeah, you end up with Gog there in the fetal position laying next to the dead prince, where then you see that the queen comes and says, they're all gone. Everybody's dead. My son, you already saw that her daughter and husband, the king, had already died before this, but she ended up getting the life tablet to try to make everything better. It has ruined everything. It's basically, to me, it's a Twilight Zone episode suddenly, and I won't play the theme right now. And she ends up being mad, crashes the tablet, and then has Gog promise her, take the pieces of this tablet, scatter them, but keep one that you will have to protect so that it can't fall in the wrong hands. Now, unfortunately, Gog, not very imaginative. He could have scattered this all over the universe, but pretty much all he has is the idea that he could get back in the ship, I guess, and hit that button so that it returns to Earth. He scatters the parts there in New York City, and then he is protecting the last piece, the piece that we saw Boomerang and Spider-Man going to get. And so basically we end the issue exactly where we ended last issue. And this is one of those things. This is a nice little Gog story. It's not a Gog book. This is the Amazing Spider-Man. There's a lot of stuff that I want more than a Gog history, a Gog origin. And there are some feels to be had, while we're all humming along to My Buddy. But are the feels there? Because, again, this isn't what I need from this book right now. It's an aside. It seemed like Nick Spencer was trying also to give you the feels. It seemed like this was his main intention here with Gog so that we feel bad for him. I just think that Spidey is going to show Gog the compassion, and Gog will end up becoming Spidey's friend, something like that, and then we'll all be able to go. But I do think that then you'll get the life tablet taken away by Gog, maybe go back to the planet. Maybe he can wish his prince back and we can listen to My Buddy again. But overall, this was a disappointment. It was a real disappointment to have this issue end where it was because of the idea that I want something more. I don't need this book to be derailed by a derailed story. You end up going on an aside with the life tablet Boomerang, the vermin that leads to Gog, and then you go on a side of an aside. I don't need that. Because of that, I am going to give this a 5.5. The art's great. The writing, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just where it lays in this run, and that the run is not giving me what I really want because of what Nick Spencer has been promising, especially with the Kindred. So that is that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you go off to eBay and buy a My Buddy, maybe even My Pet Monster. But if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, like it below, and also look in the description of all the videos, including this one, to find different links to our podcasts, our website, and everything else that we do. Thanks, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.